and welcome to Tap That MTG, the show where we tell you everything we know about Magic the Gathering that's probably wrong, but fun to talk about. I'm Leslie.
And I'm Shauna.
And we are going to talk to you about Ashiok, the Sculptor of Fears, the Planeswalker deck. Today, if you missed it last week, we brought you the Elizabeth Planeswalker deck. The video is ultimately intended to give you a little bit of insight into the deck, how you're going to play it. Basically, you've bought this deck and you want to know what am I supposed to do with it when I play? Why do I keep losing? So we're going to hopefully make it so that you win more, give you some ideas, and then at the end of this video, we'll offer some suggestions and tweaks on how to make it better.
These are great little decks for new players to start out with and just get into Magic.
Yeah, sure. And if you are a new player, basically, it's a good foundation to start tweaking a deck.
Sure.
So there's no shame in buying a deck to start with and then just making it the way you want it.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Why don't we break the deck down?
Sure. Do you want me to tell a little bit about what this deck is? What this deck does?
Break it down. Yeah,
break
it down for us.
That's what you said.
Break it down.
Oh my.
What does it do?
Okay, well this deck is all about, it's Ashiok, he's your nightmare, your opponent's nightmare, and a little bit of your nightmare too actually, because the main point of this deck is to dump cards into your graveyard and play them from there. So that's a very risky thing to do. You're also dumping cards into your opponent's graveyard as well, but your main purpose is to get your cards into your graveyard and you can play them from there. So
it's a tricky deck to play because it takes some setup and some skill and thinking about when you're going to do things too.
So it has the typical Planeswalker deck with 25 lands so that you have a couple of cards for sure that you can change out because you don't need that many.
Nope.
This deck's curve is a little bit high though, so you certainly don't want to go really low in your mana, but it's a little on the expensive side as far as the curve goes, but we'll talk about that a little bit. And it has 3 cards at 1 mana cost, 10 at 2, and 10 at 3. And then at 4 and up, there are 12 cards in the deck. And so that's a little bit high. And yeah, we'll definitely talk about that.
Yeah, well, and it's not high for the deck, it's high for the current meta. So the current meta, and what does meta mean? Like, what the heck? When people say, the meta?
The meta of the game. I couldn't figure it out for the longest time. It is the other people around you and what they're playing.
Yeah. So right now, if you're playing on Arena or even if you're playing in tournaments and stores, people are playing really fast decks that are really aggressive and kill you really quickly. And this deck takes a little bit of setup. So it might not win against those decks right now. That doesn't mean it's a bad deck. It just means it's a bad deck right now.
Yeah. I'll let you tell.
Yeah, let's break down. So we have practically half the deck. In fact, I think it is exactly half the deck is almost half the deck is black, and then probably 2/3 of the deck is blue, and then we have about 14% of the deck or 14 cards that are multicolored. So really it's very black heavy. So if you are tweaking this deck and you're adding more blue and you're not taking out blue, or you're taking out blue to add in black, just keep that in mind when and if you tweak the mana, because whatever you tweak, you should also tweak your mana.
Yes.
And then breakdown wise, as far as creatures, instants, sorceries, enchantments, we have 23 creatures. We have 5 sorcery cards. We actually only have 2 enchantments. And we have 4 instants, 1 planeswalker, of course, and as we mentioned, there's 25 land. 25 land is really too much for any deck. We recommend 23. If you're playing monocolored, you can go down to 21. If you have a lot of card draw, like in my Seconds Please deck, I'm drawing cards all the time. I play with 17 land in that deck, and I still have 2 more land than I need. So this deck, I think I would recommend 23.
Yeah, I wouldn't go lower than that, for sure, especially if you keep those high cost, and Ashiok himself is a high cost card too. So,
and there's a lot of cards that have either 2 black or 2 red. So
yeah, you don't want to be without that, and we'll talk about that later too.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Planeswalker. His name is Ashiok, Sculptor of Fears, and he costs 4, and 1 blue and 1 black for a 4 loyalty planeswalker.
6 for 4 loyalty.
What?
6 mana for 4
yes.
loyalty.
Yeah, which is a lot. And his +2 is draw a card, which is great. And then each player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. So you're milling them and yourself. So that's, again, that's working towards what you want to do. And his -4 is put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. From a graveyard. So that could be yours or his, your opponent's. So that's pretty awesome. And then his -11 is gain control of all creatures target opponent controls. So that'd be really awesome, but it's going to be really hard to get to. So, yeah, that's not something the main focus of this deck is to get cards into graveyards and then play them from there.
Yeah. So use that -5. Don't try and hold out for the -11.
Yeah, don't use it. Use it.
So creatures, the first one is Gravebreaker Lamia. It's an enchantment creature, Snake Lamia, for 4 and 1 black. So it's a little expensive. It's on the high side, 5 for a 4/4, but this 4/4 has lifelink. And when it enters the battlefield, you get to search your library for a card and put it into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. So as you remember, we have Ashiok in this deck that brings things back from the graveyard, and there is quite a few, I wouldn't say quite a few, but there are escape cards in this deck that also you can escape out of your graveyard. So you're going to look for that thing that might be too expensive to cast, but you can escape it for less. Especially since this one has spells you cast from your graveyard, cost 1 less to cast.
He's good that way.
There's only 1 of those in this deck.
Yes. There is 1 Timuret chosen from death, who is one of the demigods from the new set, Theros Beyond Death. And he is a legendary enchantment creature, and he costs 2 black, and his toughness is equal to your devotion to black. So he's going to be a big blocker there for you. And you can also pay 1 and a black and exile up to 2 target cards from graveyards, and you gain 1 life for each creature card exiled this way. So again, you want to be careful with that, because yes, you can gain life, but you need your creatures in your graveyard too. So be careful. You could also use their graveyard. That's probably the better thing to do, is get rid of their creatures so that they can't do the same thing. And yeah, that's what that's for. The devotion piece, maybe we should explain that again, because that's still confusing for a lot of us. So this card, devotion, is the number of those little colored pips that are on the mana cost for these cards. So he is a 2/2 for sure, because he has 2 black pips on his card. So even if he's out there by himself, he's a 2/2.
But Towering Wave Mystic, if you decide to leave him in this deck, whenever Towering Wave Mystic deals damage, target player puts that many cards from the top of their library into their graveyard. So in this case, he's a 2/1. Unless you've buffed him up, he's going to make target player, which could be yourself, put 2 cards into their graveyard. We don't love this one. There's 3 of them in this deck, and we'll talk about maybe some stuff you could put in to replace. He's really hard to kind of get through to do any damage. There's not really any way in this deck to make him unblockable or give him trample, but he is a little guy that could be a blocker that you can just block something, and then you have something in your graveyard to exile when you need to escape something.
That's true.
So you kind of weigh your pros and cons. Do you want to have some lower mana cost things that you can just use as chump blockers? But then why not put just a 1/1 that actually does something like a Death Toucher or something?
Yeah, something like that, especially with black.
Yeah.
You have black at your disposal. Devour of Memory is a 2/1 for a 1 blue and 1 black. He is a nightmare creature, and whenever 1 or more cards are put into your graveyard from your library, Devour of Memory gets +1/+1 until end of turn and can't be blocked this turn. So that is what is nice about him, is when you're putting those cards into your graveyard, he gets not a counter, sorry, that's the difference. He only gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So you have to keep that in mind. And you can pay 1 and a blue and a black to put the top card of your library into your graveyard. So you can do that before you attack, or you can do that in the middle of attack. You can use some tricks there.
Buff them up, have your mana up so that they have to think twice before attacking you.
Exactly.
But we were talking about this one. There's 2 in this, and we were
Yes,
talking about this
2.
one as I think one of the possible win conditions of this.
Yes.
So there's only 2, but maybe you might want more than that, which we'll talk about in 2 weeks. So Swimmer in Nightmares, because everyone wants to swim in a nightmare, is a 1/4 for 3, 2 and a blue. And it gets +3/+0 as long as there are 10 or more cards in a single graveyard. So whether you've milled yourself or milled your opponent, once there's 10 cards, this guy becomes a 4/4, and he's nice. Nice to have a 4/4. It can't be blocked as long as you control an Ashiok Planeswalker. So you have this little unblockable guy, and if you can fit some more Ashioks in your deck, then this becomes a win condition as well.
Elite Instructor for 2 and a blue. It's a 2/2, and when it enters the battlefield, draw a card, then discard a card. So there again, you're getting cards into your graveyard, and you're going through your deck and getting stuff that you want in your hand. And that's a good way to get to your cards.
Yeah, 2 of them in that.
Yes.
Underworld Charger, there's 3 of. He's a 3/3 for 3, which is decent for 2 and a black. He's a nightmare horse, and he can't block, so he's not on the battlefield to block. He's on the battlefield to charge in, hence he's a charger. Because it's okay if he escapes. You want him to be in your graveyard and escape him. He costs a little bit more. However, he escapes with 2, count them, 2 1/1 counters on him. So he comes back as a 5/5 that is just super aggressive.
Mind Rack Harpy is a 3/2 flyer for 3 and a black, and it is at the beginning of combat on your turn. Each player puts the top 3 cards of their library into the graveyard. So as he swings, and you have that blue and black guy swinging too, then you've already got buff on that guy.
Yeah, and that's just
the
beginning
Devourer,
of combat,
that's just
so it doesn't
beginning
matter.
of combat, so you haven't even done anything else. So
Yeah, you don't even have to.
again, there's
do
4
combat.
copies of those because that's a good little flyer there.
Yeah, well,
Very
and nothing
aggressive.
else. It's a flyer that
Yeah.
can. I love this one. Farika Spawn. Well, I hate it when people play it against me, but it's a good card for getting rid of something that they control. So he's a 3/4 for 4, 3 and a black. He's a Gorgon. He doesn't have Death Touch, so Jace.
Sadly.
Shauna doesn't like him. But he's a 3/4, and you can exile, or when you escape him, he comes back with 2 1/1 counters on it, and when it enters the battlefield this way, each opponent sacrifices a non-Gorgon creature. So, sacrificing a creature is great. When you put them out, you can just be aggressive with them because you want them in your graveyard, or this is another one that you could target, put it in your graveyard so you have a removal that you can bring back for 6.
The next card is, we have 2 copies of Ashiok's Forerunner. So this is the Planeswalker deck exclusive. It's not in packs, I'm pretty sure. And it's for 3, a blue and a black, a human wizard with flash. So you play that on the opponent's turn. And when it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for, or graveyard too, for a card named Ashiok, Sculptor of Fears. Reveal it and put it into your hand. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. So there you can go and get your Ashiok out because there's only one of them. And or you can get them back from the graveyard, which is really nice. You could be dumping them.
Exactly.
Dumping them in there.
So instants and sorceries, we're on to those. We have 3 Sleep of the Dead. This is a nice little kind of removal for
cute.
a bit anyways. He only costs 1, and you can tap target creature. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. It does eventually untap, but it just kind of gives you a chance to get past Fluffy. Because this is
Yeah, exactly. It's fluffy from
It's fluffy.
Harry Potter. That's true, yeah.
It also has an escape cost, so you can just cast it again for 3 and getting rid of some of those cards that you don't need from your graveyard.
Question.
Yeah.
Can you escape more than once in the same card?
Oh, well, that is a great question. Yes, you can. Because when you escape, you don't have to exile it, so it just goes back in your graveyard. As long as you can pay the cost, you can escape as many times as you want. It does cause you to exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. So you are getting rid of some of those other things. So you have to kind of decide,
This is
Just
where
like
the
mana, what you want to
thinking.
spend it on, because
Mhm.
you're going to have other things you might want to escape, and you might not want to just use this. So this allows you to tap their things and be aggressive, though.
Yep. For the next sorcery we have, it's 2 of them, and it's Funeral Rites for 2 and a black, and it is you draw 2 cards, lose 2 life, and you put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. So again, you're sifting through your deck and drawing some cards. Black is hard to get card draw in, so it's kind of nice
It's
to have
essentially using your graveyard as
that. Another hand.
another hand.
Yeah.
So, Glimpse of Freedom for 1 and a blue is an instant that allows you to draw a card. That's decent.
Mhm.
2 mana,
Yeah.
draw a card. But it also has escape, so you can draw a card again. Exile 5 other cards from your graveyard for 3. It's an okay one. I think I would probably change this one out. But we'll get to that. Stay tuned for tweets.
I have another question.
Yeah.
Can you do the escape on your opponent's turn?
Yes, it's still an instant.
There we go.
Good
Just
question.
checking.
Yeah.
Final Death is our big removal here, but it's 4 and a black, but it is exile target creature. So this set, for those of you who maybe haven't seen it yet, there are some gods who are indestructible in this set, and one of the ways you have to use to get rid of them is exiling them. So this is a really good, well, it has to be a creature at the time as well. So this is at instant speed, which is really nice. So it becomes a creature and you exile it before it can do its craziness.
Yeah. It's pretty expensive though at 5.
Yes, 5 is a lot.
And then our enchantment, we have Mire's Grasp for 1 and a black. It is an enchantment order. Target enchanted creature gets -3/-3. So if you have something that's they have something that's really big on the battlefield, you just want to make it a little smaller to give yourself some respite, you can do that. Or if it's 3 or lower, you can get rid of their card. Maybe you put 2 of them on the same creature to get rid of it. Gods, for example, can be defeated using -3/-3, but they cannot be defeated with destroying them or doing damage to them. So this is a good way to get rid of those things that are indestructible.
Yeah. There's only 2 of them.
There's
though,
2 of
so
them.
Use
in
them
this.
wisely.
Use them wisely, exactly. Don't just randomly get rid of their 1/1 with -3/-3.
That's right. And
What's
as
the land
far
like?
as land goes, there isn't anything special in this deck except for 2 Unknown Shores, which is tapping to add colorless mana, or you can pay 1 and add mana of any color. So it's a little bit of mana fixing, but not really great mana fixing because you have to actually pay another mana to get that color of mana. So, meh is kind of what
Meh.
we're saying about that one.
Yeah.
So that brings us to our tweaks. What
Tweaks.
can we do with this?
Oh gosh. So in general, this deck, I hate to say it, it's not that great. It has
In this meta.
It needs some work, especially in this meta. A lot of high mana cost things. You notice even a lot of the escape things cost a lot. So if you were playing a multiplayer game, it might be okay, but it definitely needs some tweaking. So some of the stuff that we thought you could add more of is maybe adding another Ashiok. So right now you have 1. If you had 2, it would come up more often, so you could take advantage of that -5, and then
playing those expensive creatures for free.
Playing those expensive creatures for free
Yeah.
is ultimately gets you there that much faster. Now Ashiok himself costs 6, so that's harder. But there's also the 2 forerunners in there that will grab him out of the graveyard or from your library for you. So that will hopefully help bring him back. But just having 1 more in will help. Yeah.
Another thing is to have another one of the Timeret chosen from death cards in there, because his main purpose is to be a big blocker for you, because his butt does get big the more black stuff you have out there, and there is a lot of black things in this deck. So he gets to sit there and hold things off for you so that you can slow down the game a little bit. Plus you can use him to get rid of their graveyard shenanigans, which a lot of decks have now. So you need to see him more often, and there's only 1 right now, so at least 2 would be better.
Yeah. Same with the Gravebreaker Lamaya. There's only 1 in the deck. Good card, and it's a 4/4 for 5 that with lifelink with upside. So if you had 1 more, then you'd see it more often. Now, of course, all of these things, we're adding cards. We'll get to the fact, like, what are we going to take out and what are we going to switch. So, Devour of Memories?
Yeah, so I think there should be 4 copies of that Devour of Memories, just because of, again, what it can do with your graveyard and stuff, and it's a aggressive card, and it's only for 2 mana, and it makes that mana curve a little smaller, so you can use it to get it out faster and hit them harder, because you're going to need to.
So this is where we get to, like, what do you take out? So right now we've suggested adding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards already, and that's not even like some of the other tweaks that we might have suggested. So we were thinking maybe the Towering Mystics, they are, guess, nice chump blockers, but if you're going to just have chump blockers, there's better chump blockers in there. So if they can't get through to get your stuff into your graveyard, then put stuff in there that is more relevant to the deck. So your Devourer of Memories, we're adding 2 of those in. Take out at least 2 copies of the Towering Mystic. Take out 1 Towering Mystic to add maybe another Demigod, the Tiamat in there. Now you have the ability to put cards in your graveyard using the Devourer of Memory instead of having to do combat damage in order to get there. So you could probably take those out, move them to your sideboard in case you like them. This deck doesn't come with a sideboard, so you can take and have 15 cards in there that are for situational things. So,
and that brings us to our next one, which is the Final Death. That exiling target creature is great, but for 5 it's pretty expensive as far as removal goes. And until you know what that opponent is playing, he may not even have creatures that you need to worry about exiling. So put that card in your sideboard and then just bring it in if you actually do need to use to get rid of his big stuff.
If they are playing gods or things like that, you can bring it in. Yeah. What would you add in there instead for removal?
Well, things like the Murderous Rider card, which is a very, very strong. You get the removal plus a card with lifelink. I mean, that's really going to help you with this, staying alive and getting rid of their stuff.
Plus Murderous Rider is 2 spells in 1, so
and it goes back into your deck. So
it's just a really good card.
Yeah.
So as far as removal goes,
have a copy of it, throw it in there.
Throw it in
for
there.
Sure.
Yeah. The other thing I was just thinking too, if we go back to, can we go back up to the draw card?
Sure.
Just so I can see it and remind myself which one it is. Glimpse of. The Glimpse of Freedom. Yeah. So this is a 2 mana cost draw card, which we said was pretty good. But to bring it back from your graveyard, it costs a lot. Something like Radical Idea with Jumpstart, all you have to do is discard a card from your hand, which you can discard a card that you want to escape. So Radical Idea, take out the glimpses. I wouldn't even say put them in your sideboard. Just like, I don't know.
Radical Idea is better.
Wallpaper your wall with them or something like that. But Radical Idea is way better.
It's not a body, I suppose, but
it's Well,
Glimpse isn't. Glimpse isn't a creature either. What am I talking about?
Radical Idea does the same thing and it's better. So replace those.
I guess.
No, it's not.
Radical Idea is an instant too. Oh, Radical Idea. There you go.
Yeah.
Get rid of it.
Yeah. Get rid of it. And then we were also thinking Agent of Treachery.
Yes.
Would be good. So this deck is a lot about, especially with Ashiok's like -11. There's some stealing of people's creatures. You can bring stuff back from your graveyard. I think, does Ashiok bring stuff back from a graveyard?
No, it's yours. I'm pretty sure. Let's just double check. We'll just double check. It's protect
from a graveyard. Yeah.
So
you can steal things from their graveyard with that as well, which is fantastic. But since kind of the theme is like steal their creatures or bring your stuff back, we thought, Agent of Treachery is kind of like all about stealing things from people's graveyard.
It's expensive, but what if you had Ashiok out and you could play him for free?
Yeah.
And steal their stuff. That would be so mean.
Yeah.
Funny, but mean.
Funny, but mean.
And I don't like Agents of Treachery very much.
I hate it. Every time. I don't play it very often, and so...
I do play it sometimes, but...
So, we were also thinking some cards that you could consider, but you know, again, you have to figure out what you're going to pull. Or Sweet Oblivion is 2 mana cost. It's an uncommon. Target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard. It has an escape cost to it, so you can do that again. Again, that can be yourself or them.
The Ashiok Dream Renderer. So this is where you can play another Ashiok Planeswalker. So you can have both of those guys out at the same time if you want. And that helps with that one creature that says if you have an Ashiok Planeswalker. He is a 5 Planeswalker for only
5 loyalty
3.
for 3. But he
But he doesn't have a plus on him. But his -1 is target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard. Then exile each opponent's graveyard. So you're already dumping stuff into their graveyard, and you're putting things in your graveyard, but you're totally exiling his entire graveyard.
Yeah.
That's really...
And we were talking about this earlier because I was like, well, you don't want to exile your graveyard, so if you mill yourself, then... But if you read the words, it says target player, is that what you just said?
Yep.
Target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard, then exile. So you can mill yourself and then exile their graveyard. So just know you can split that up. Omen of the Sea for 2. It's an enchantment. It has flash, which is awesome. And then when it enters the battlefield, you can scry 2 and then draw a card. There's nothing wrong with card draw. You need some card draw. Knowing what's coming, scrying, it's a great card all around. If nothing else, if you're finding you're not getting what you're doing, you can put this in your sideboard so that you could bring it out if they're
Being able to scry 2 is a big deal.
it's a big deal.
Yeah. And you can later on in the game, if you want, you can pay 2 in a blue and sacrifice it and scry again. So yeah, it's really handy. And yeah, Murderous Rider, we talked about that one, how awesome that is in this deck. And it would count towards, it's a good thing to count towards your Black Devotion too. So keep that in mind. Did we talk about the castles? I don't think we did.
No. So the biggest, I think, problem with this deck is not necessarily what's in it. It is pretty high mana curve wise. So you need to bring that down. And if you add those lower ones, it will definitely bring your curve down. The biggest problem, I think, with this deck as is the land base. And that is kind of, you know, when you first start playing, you think, what? It's just land. It's fine. I just have swamps and I'll have islands, which is fine. But in our play tests, maybe we're just unlucky, but we kept not having the mana that we wanted to play. So
Constantly.
highly recommending at least putting dual lands in there. I'll let you talk about the castles. I'm going to switch to the dual lands.
Okay.
So there's 2. Temple of Deceit, which is the new scry land from Theros Beyond Death. And then we have Watery Grave, which came out again, I guess, in Ravnica Allegiance. And one of them is the shock land, Watery Grave, which just means when you put it into the battlefield, you can choose to pay 2 life to have it come in untapped, which is great. And then again, we just talked about scrying and how good it is. Temple of Deceit allows you to scry. If you play with 8, 4 of each of those, and then just swamps and mountains, you're golden as is.
Yep.
But that will give you a really good land base. You
Much
do still need basic lands, so don't just replace all your lands with special lands.
No, you need
Especially with the castles, because...
Yes, the castles require them. So, but the blue and the black castles are actually very, very strong castles. They are from
Throne of Eldraine.
Throne of Eldraine. And the blue castle, Castle Vantress, enters the battlefield tapped unless you control an island. So you need your island. And it taps for blue mana. But its ability to pay 2 and 2 blue to scry 2, again, there's that scry again. So again, you can do that right before your turn, whatever, and scry those cards before you dump them into the graveyard or before you draw them. They're awesome. And then, again, we always want to have card draw, and Castle Lochwain, that's what it does. It comes into the battlefield tapped unless you control a swamp. Leave those swamps. And you pay 1 and 2 black is all. And you can draw a card, then you lose life equal to the number of cards in your hand. But being able to draw cards is awesome, and more than 1, 2, 3.
And you can choose, right? You don't have to use those abilities if it's not the right time. So
Exactly.
Timing is everything.
They're very, very handy when you need them.
Yep. So that's pretty much it for our suggestions. We hope that you get something out of them. Let us know how your deck does as you tweak it. And if you have other suggestions, things that you could add to make this even better. Again, our suggestions were trying to stay on theme and not just completely change the deck out. It's probably not going to win you tier 1 at the standard showdown or the next standard tournament at your thing, but it'll be fun to play if it goes off, and that's what it's about. So thank you so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please hit that like button or consider subscribing. Also, you can listen to our podcast, catch up with us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. And that's it for what we have for you today. We'll see you next time. And in the meantime, tap those magic cards and have fun doing it. See you later, guys.